I'd say spoiler warning, but you clicked on the video, so anyway, it only took literal decades of us theorizing every single mysterious woman was going to be Susan or the Rani for us to get a 2-for-1 deal in an episode that is otherwise... If this is your first time joining me, where the you been? Because we're almost done with this whole season, okay? But if you still need it, before the season started, I had one of my cats in a percentile die predict what the quality of this episode was going to be like. So I'll go ahead and show you that prediction, and we'll talk about whether or not it was accurate. Samson predicted that the episode would maybe be really good. The percentile die predicted a 0 out of 100. A very contradictory prediction. The dice are not panning out this season. Sorry about that. I mean, I wouldn't give the episode anything super high, to be honest, like a 90 out of 100, 80, like nothing like that. I'd probably hover around the 45, 55 out of 100 mark, I think. As always, I'm going to focus on the positives first. Sets, costumes, designs, incredible. I've said that every review, I'll continue to say it. I really like those sorts of scenes and episodes where you get to see a bunch of different aliens and costumes and cultures and things like that, and I think that really gives those departments a moment to shine, and they continue to do that here. Side characters I really liked. Mike and Gary were really fun and also really funny and relatable when they were talking to the doctor and saying, you know, I would do anything for you. That was very, very real. Kora, especially though, is the character that to me shines out of this entire episode. Seeing how torn she is, that there's being this attempt to find some sort of justice for her people and expose the corporation that has harmed her and her planet, but it's being done in such a violent and shocking way. And, you know, that struggle with her having to decide to expose her true heritage. Very interesting there. I think Kora's character is also a great way to showcase just how far-reaching and awful genocide is. It isn't just those massive acts of physical violence or the theft of resources. It's acts of terror on almost every single level that you can terrorize a person. Taking their poppies, destroying their planet, takes away multiple different forms of income, which creates financial hardship for them, which means that it's very difficult for them to rebuild their society after everything has been taken from them. Kora's horns being an example of how people can be forced to assimilate into the dominant society. Kora mentions that Hellions are not allowed to sing, and that's an example of how marginalized people are kept out of the media unless it's as a means to harm them further. I just think that her character was done very well and exemplifies this issue very well, though I do have a lot of issues with the episode's politics that I'll discuss further on. I personally think that the tonal shift of the episode works quite well. I can agree that it doesn't always work, but I think that it works quite well and that it's also very fitting for what we are seeing in real life with Eurovision, with all of this corruption and horror being hidden under shiny, you know, fun camp surfaces. The only problem with this is the song contest is still portrayed as this fun, super cool event that unites people through the power of music, and there isn't really any responsibility given to them for not allowing Hellions to sing or for taking money from such an awful sponsor with a history of genocide. The responsibility is just kind of placed on that sponsor. Back to positives, I did really like the shot of everybody sort of being lifted and floating into the air. For me, it really invoked Jordan Peele's Nope with the alien jean jacket. Sort of mass scale helplessness of tons and tons of people being instantly turned into just things and small prey. Very spooky, very interesting. I did like that particular shot. The songs of the contestants, for the most part, were bops. I will say, release the Liz Lizardine cut, because I was so excited to see that Christina Rotondo, who sings for Janice Goblin, would be back, and then she only got like 3 seconds. But you know what? There was a more important song to be sung, so I can give up on that. Susan's return was actually unexpected for me this episode. I had read the Rani leaks and seen all of those rumors, so that I was just kind of like, yeah, okay, I knew this was gonna happen. I did not expect Susan to show up, though. Seeing Carol Ann Ford in today's TARDIS was so cool. I was so sad that they didn't do anything with her for the 50th and especially for the 60th. And so to finally see that they're bringing her back and hopefully giving her something really amazing to return to, I was so excited. It was just, yeah. I am really intrigued to see what they might be doing with her, and I hope that they give her something really cool in the future. People started theorizing about the Rani coming back and Mrs. Flood being the Rani. I got really nervous because I was like, you know, there's a lot of ways that could go wrong, but you know what? Archie Punjabi already stole the show for me as the Rani. Just incredible spot on energy, and I'm so interested in why the Mrs. Flood half of the biogeneration seems almost subservient to her. We'll talk more about the reveal shortly, but yeah, you know what? All the dread, all the worry I had has really kind of taken a back seat because just the energy she brings is so great so far, and I'm so excited to see more of her. And you know what? To the two Ronnies, okay, I am usually free Sunday nights. If you would like to talk to me about Sunday nights when I am free on Sunday. I didn't know who Rylan was before this episode. Sorry. I didn't know who Graham Norton was, so I was excited when he showed up because I was like, yeah, I know you. Those two were fun additions to the episode. I still don't really know a lot about Rylan, okay, I'm sorry. But I thought it was really funny, this idea of a modern TV presenter just cryogenically freezing himself to come back every single year. He's staying booked, he's staying busy. The episode in general did have a lot of fun elements, and I know that's what everybody was really excited for from it, was that fun, sort of exciting high camp, which I don't think the episode was that camp, to be honest, but I think it was fun if you don't look into a lot of specific stuff too much. But unfortunately, I can't not look into those things. I mean, that's also kind of the point of a review. So let's move on to the negatives. Nitpick warning. Okay, sorry. If you say that something is camp, like if you point out that it's camp, it kind of stops feeling camp. It just feels like when you have to explain a joke and the moment falls flat because of that. Starting off easy. Verita Sethu once again gives a great performance as Belinda, but I was disappointed in this episode, and I had the same feeling about last episode. It just really doesn't feel like she has anything to do. With the doctor being out of commission, that would have been a really great opportunity to showcase her skills and give her that moment and give her a way to help save the day. Don't get me wrong, I do find her scenes with Kora very touching and very heartwarming, and I think it once again showcases just how caring and wonderful Belinda is, even with total strangers, and how understanding she is. And I know it is Doctor Who, so the doctor needs some of his flashy save the day moments, but I don't know, I just feel like it was a missed opportunity, and we definitely haven't seen a lot of Belinda in these recent episodes, or at least seen her do anything, and it just feels like a missed opportunity. I did see that Juno Dawson apparently didn't have really any information about Belinda or where she was at this point in the story. She kind of just knew that Belinda was a nurse in her 30s, and I think that really explains why she doesn't have a lot to do. You know, Juno said that she kind of had to go just the very base audience insert route. It's not bad, but I think it does explain why Belinda doesn't do much this episode, or why there isn't a ton of growth, and it might even explain why there was kind of such a drop in Belinda's more challenging attitude towards the doctor, because the writers of the most recent episodes might not have known that that's even a thing. I don't fully know what's going on with that, or what the reasoning is for that in TV production, but hopefully that's not a very common thing, because I would think you would want your writers to know where the character is at in the story, because that can have major effects and implications on what they do and how they act and what they say. Next step up, back to talk about the reveals. Susan's I didn't mind much. The Ronnies, I could not get into it, and I didn't quite buy it either. The problem with me saying this, that I do want to acknowledge, is that, like I said, I was aware of the leaks, and everybody has been theorizing that Mrs. Flood is the Rani for like 2 years now. So unfortunately, you know, that does mess with the viewing experience, and I don't unfortunately know what my reaction would have been like if I hadn't known all of that beforehand. But it just feels so oddly placed, and it feels like another missed opportunity to have the Doctor present for that specific reveal, because, you know, the Rani is a classic Doctor Who character, and the majority of us, like 98% of us, know who she is and about the theories. But I did have, like, on one of my social media posts, I had someone asking me, like, who she was and why people were thinking it was such a big deal. I think if you would have seen the Doctor's reaction in that moment, because of course we'll see it later, but in that first moment where this era of the show is introducing you to the Rani, it would have hit like 10 times harder if you had the Doctor just freaking the fuck out. I'm sorry, but I just didn't really like biogeneration when they did it the first time, but like I could excuse it then, because you know what, it's the 60th anniversary, it's rare, it's a legend, it's something that never happens, and you know, it makes sense for something that crazy to happen when the Doctor has, you know, messed with the salt and opened the fantasy floodgates. But twice? And with something as trivial as two brain stems freezing, when you pull the same trick multiple times, it feels less cool and crazy and wild each time, and unfortunately, I just don't even think the first case of biogeneration had enough intrigue to carry on to make this one as crazy and impactful as I think it was meant to be. I would be very interested to see if there's a larger explanation for it, like the Rani experimenting on herself, or I did theorize on Twitter that maybe when the Doctor bioregenerated, it had some kind of ripple effect throughout time, since all of the other Time Lords have the genetic code. I don't know. Next step up. The Doctor torturing Kid did not work for me at all. Now, I love a little dark Doctor Whomst, okay? I like the Doctor's darker moments, and I think with 15 this has kind of really been building up, and that facade has been crumbling a lot more easily, and it's an attack that's particularly triggering because of his memories of Gallifrey and his people, so it should really work, but it just doesn't. I don't want to say that it comes out of nowhere, but it feels extremely odd. Maybe not necessarily out of character, but extremely odd. I know that Kid is threatening trillions of people and all this crazy stuff is going down. I get it. But what is crazy to me is that the Doctor does not even remotely try to understand why he's doing this or what's going on, and he also makes no attempt to appeal to him to get him to stop first. Kid even mentions that he's, quote, taking revenge against the corporation, and you're gonna tell me the Doctor wouldn't sense that that's kind of a red flag and try to figure out what he means by that? He says to Kid, you know, now you're threatening 3 trillion people, and there's no why attached to that. There's no inquiry about, you know, what did the corporation do that was so bad that would drive you to this? He's just immediately like, yeah, try something and I'll sit there and watch you freeze to death. And then the next time he sees him in person, he's physically torturing him over and over again. And that part especially doesn't make sense to me, because if I followed the plot right, which I've watched the episode multiple times, so I would hope to God I did, the Doctor destroyed Kid's Delta Wave before this happened, meaning he had already thwarted his entire plan, and nothing was going to happen to those 3 trillion people. He was fully disarmed, and he couldn't have been, I don't know, just watched over while the Doctor instead turned to figuring out how to get everybody back to the station and revived. It just gets more and more baffling the more and more I think about it, because was there really that strong of a reason for the Doctor, after defeating the villain, to then go on and relentlessly electrocute an unarmed man? And I know that scene, right, he is portrayed as being in the wrong for doing that, but it all feels completely unearned, because it just does not line up at all, either with how the Doctor has acted before, or his original motivations for doing things like that in the past, or with how he is treated by his companions and other characters for doing those things. Some people have said it fits because, you know, the Doctor thinks Belinda and the other people are dead, and so it's like the Doctor with Clara in Series 9, but that's not true. The Doctor knows fully that they are not dead. He is the one that brings up to the other men that everybody in space is frozen and suspended, and when one of the characters says, well, you know, it's freezing up there, he's like, yeah, but that actually helps us because they're suspended and they can be revived. So he is fully aware that not only are Belinda and the other people not dead, but there is very much a chance to revive and save them. He is just concerned about how he's going to do that without the TARDIS. And when it comes to the idea of him being triggered by the deaths of 3 trillion people, I kind of get it, but at the same time, like I said, he had already thwarted Kid's entire plan before he started electrocuting him. So those were only potential kills, and none of them were actually ever harmed. It also feels like such an odd choice to not have the Doctor know what Kid's motivations fully are for this scene, and really the majority of the episode, because it's so unlike the Doctor, even in extreme situations like this, to make absolutely no effort to understand or piece together what's happening here. And once what happened to Helia is alluded to through Kora's song, it doesn't really seem like there's that much remorse or understanding coming from the Doctor. It's just really all extremely jarring, and again, another missed opportunity here, because the Doctor himself, like Kid, is also the victim of a genocide. And they acknowledge this, right, with the Doctor being triggered by what Kid was trying to do. But I just think it would have been so interesting to see the Doctor at least try to connect or appeal to Kid through their shared trauma. There is a really strong, beautiful story there, and what they went with is just, I don't get it. And there's just not nearly enough impact on these characters or their relationship for this to feel earned at all. Belinda and the Doctor talk about it very quickly and almost nonchalantly. Like, Belinda hugs him and tells him he's wonderful right after she's watched him torture some. The Doctor and Belinda talk about it so quickly and almost nonchalantly, like Belinda has just walked in on him torturing an unarmed person, and she proceeds to tell him he's wonderful and hug him, and then she's like, yeah, you know what? That was pretty scary back there. And the Doctor's like, yeah, I was triggered. I guess it was pretty scary. And then they just, that's it. And they walk off into the sunset. I just have so many issues with it, and I know in my heart that it is probably 99% likely that this is going to go nowhere for this Doctor or for Belinda or for their relationship, and it's just all very unfortunate. And it's not even the biggest issue that I have with this episode, which brings us to the top of our list. My biggest issue with this episode is the way that it mishandles the story and the politics and the very real world issues that it's trying to bring in. Now, I'm very open to talking about this and exploring this further, so I'm very interested in hearing other people's perspectives. But I did not like it. There was a lot of issues I had with it, and every time I rewatch it, there's just kind of more and more there for me that it just does not sit right with me at all. I really want to stress that I fully believe that Juno Dawson had really good intentions with writing this, and I have enjoyed her work for Doctor Who before. I think it's pretty ballsy for the show to take something like this on, knowing and fully intending that this episode would air during the finale of a show, a singing contest that they are directly, critiquing and invoking during a time where said contest is being under scrutiny for something that they're paralleling and critiquing in the episode. This episode was very timely and very relevant, and with better workings, I would love to see more of this stuff from Doctor Who. I want to establish all of that because I don't want people to feel that I am just coming from this from an angle of bad intentions or a bad reading, that I'm just trying to find something to pick apart. I've rewatched the episode about 6 or 7 times now, and I've spent a lot of time since it aired reading positives and negatives and a lot of different perspectives just to make sure that I fully know what I want and I'm trying to say with this review. Let's address the elephant in the room. This episode aired the same day as the Eurovision final, and it is Space Eurovision. That's the whole idea, that's the whole theme of the episode. Many people are currently calling for Eurovision to be boycotted, and have since 2019, because they continue to platform Israel despite their genocide against Palestine, which has been going on since the 1940s, but has been completely full force exacerbated since Hamas's attack on the 7th of October of 2023. This made a lot of Doctor Who fans, including myself, very nervous about what kind of story and what kind of political allegories this episode could be including. This episode might not be a direct parallel to Israel's inclusion in Eurovision, especially when you consider production timelines, but if it isn't, and it isn't invoking, Israel and Palestine, then there's a lot of crazy coincidences. There's the details about Helia's crops being burned so they can't grow back again, while Palestine's olive trees are burned. Poppies are very significant to Palestine and can symbolize resilience. Furthermore, many people have connected the theme and the story of this episode to Moroccan Oil, which is an Israeli company that sponsors Eurovision. So there's a lot going on that could suggest that that is indeed the parallel that they're going for here. And I have seen other people, draw connections to other Middle Eastern countries that have been pillaged for resources, like Afghanistan. Whatever parallel you can make, the episode is very clear that it's telling the story of a people who have been marginalized with their home colonized and pillaged. And I do commend the episode for going so far and being so blatant as to referencing a genocidal force being in some way involved with the Interstellar Song Contest, because again, we are seeing this actually happen right now with Eurovision. However, I do think that there is unfortunately some accidental mishandling of the story of Helion and the kids that unintentionally upholds some pretty dangerous narratives. When you're telling the story of someone or a people who are just trying to get awareness or justice, and you're trying to keep them in a sympathetic light, it's probably not the best idea to make them actual villains and actual straight-up terrorists who hope to indiscriminately kill trillions and trillions of people. And it's probably not the best to portray them as playing into what people think about them, which is that they're monsters, when we are seeing real life innocent civilians being portrayed as monsters, as inherent killers, when they're actually just people begging to be seen as human beings while their homes are being destroyed and colonized and everyone they know is being slaughtered. And this could work, right? Paralleling what is happening in real life. If you were meaning to subvert expectations or maybe switch to focusing on the corporation or the song contest as the actual villain. It could work if Kid wasn't actually painted to be an irredeemable, inherent killer by the Doctor, our hero of the story, who says, quote, "Your cold, filthy heart just wants to kill." There's not any acknowledgement from the Doctor about how Kid might have been driven to this point by a larger, more evil force. And yes, people can and should pick up the fact that this is what happened with Kid from the episode, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't still really clash with how the hero and how the episode treats Kid for the majority of its runtime. It also puts the Doctor in this insane position where he's echoing a very real genocidal sentiment that's being used to kill civilians, including children, as I record this video, that they're all inherently killers, that they're all inherently violent, or that they're going to be because it's just in their nature. That is not the thing I ever want to see from a character who is supposed to be my hero. And a big issue with this, again, is the fact that the Doctor does not know Kid's full backstory or motivations, or he doesn't know that the Hellions have been victims of genocide. Even though he's aware that Kid is taking revenge against the corporation for some reason, he just makes no attempt to understand that, and that's insane to me. And when he does, supposedly find out at the end of the episode at the concert, there's no walk back from that. This episode falls into the same trap that a lot of media does these days, where it's trying to make a really good point, it's trying to highlight societal underdogs. They get to a point where there's a really good story there, and there's a really good opportunity to portray and show that strife. But they decide that they want villains to be the main face of this strife, and if you're sympathizing with a villain too much, then they're no longer a villain. So in order to make them more of a villain, they invent some wildly crazy, violent, senseless act like trying to murder 3 trillion people, which is an insane number to come up with, by the way, just to make sure that you know, right? These people are evil, these people are the villains, but it all it does is underwrite their entire movement and that entire story. The focus is almost entirely on Kid as this crazy, senseless, and kind of charismatic maniac who is going to kill trillions of people, and the Doctor's response to him, and not on the corporation that actually caused this. And there's no explanation of the ways in which, violence and colonization and things like that, might lead people down these paths, which could be much more fitting as a real world issue to focus on. And obviously there's Kora to consider, and the scene at the end of the episode where she is able to sing the song of her people in her native language on such a big stage that has previously denied them is beautiful, but it makes me wonder why the motivations of the villains and the story couldn't have just tied more into that. Like, maybe instead of trying to kill 3 trillion people, they could have been trying to just hack the broadcast and, you know, expose what the corporation subjected their people to and expose the truth. I can definitely see it from the angle that the episode is trying to have a discussion about how people can go about justice and revenge wrong, and that, you know, there's more non-violent ways to go about things and more non-violent ways of protest. But does that really work when the only form of nonviolent protest we see, and that is encouraged in the episode, comes as a response to violence from the oppressed and not the oppressor? And another issue I have with this scene is it's kind of framed in a weird way, like the Interstellar Song Contest has allowed Kora to do this song and do this resistance. And again, it's framing the song contest as still being this fun, uniting, good event when it's not really delving into the fact that it has enabled the genocide of the Hellions by taking the corporation's blood money and not allowing Hellions to perform. So I just, it doesn't sit right with me. Again, I do really think that this episode and the writers had good intentions, and I do also want to say that I have no doubt that there was some level of corporate pushback. I think someone told me that in Doctor Who magazine there was some mention of this episode going onto a 9th draft, so that's a very real possibility that that's something that happened, that they had to tone down or change some things around with the episode and its messaging. I just unfortunately feel that the messaging winds up mishandled, and whether it's a real world parallel or not, which it definitely is in some way, shape, or form, it just goes down a very unfortunate path that a lot of stories tend to, and there are some really kind of damaging impacts that it could have. I've seen the episode a lot now, and I think it's fine, especially if you want to turn your brain off to the politics for some reason, but I unfortunately just can't quite look past everything that I've just discussed. Thank you very much for listening to me. I apologize for what is probably a very long review once I get it edited, but is also a late review. I just really wanted to make sure that I spoke about this properly. Please consider taking a look at the description of this video, as I'll be putting some important GoFundMes and some important charities that are currently supporting those affected by the genocide against Palestine. I hope you're staying safe, happy, and healthy, and I hope you're having a great day, night, whatever time it is for you.